The 2020 campaign trail looks very different due to the coronavirus outbreak. And now the Texas Democratic Party will be holding its convention virtually. The June event will be entirely digital with the main stage broadcast on social media platforms. Party business will be conducted on a video chat platform. This all comes as candidates have had to turn to virtual rallies in recent months, and voters have turned to voting by mail. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News 2020 campaign reporter Adam Brewster. So Adam, how is this virtual convention going to work in Texas?
Well, they're looking at building out, you mentioned kind of those two different platform channels that they'll be operating. They're kind of looking at, determining where exactly the speakers and things like that will be speaking from. But the idea is to kind of build out, a TV studio and a control room to broadcast it out. That social media stage will have some of the traditional public-facing things you think of from a campaign, whether that is, a main speech from a keynote speaker, a high-profile panel, or a performance. Some of that party business will be conducted on a video chat service, and that deals with things party platform discussion, voting on national delegates, and when it comes to a convention, voting on national delegates at a state convention, that's a key priority of those. That'll happen on a service, they say, similar, like a Google Form type service.
And what's been the response from party leaders in Texas about having this convention all virtual?
They're really excited about the opportunity here. They say this is a chance to change the way they conduct conventions going forward, that they are going to take some of the ideas they implement this year and use them in future conventions. It's a chance for them to also, they say, be more inclusive. Not everyone can always afford to take time off or to pay for a hotel room, to spend time to travel to the state convention. They say this is a chance for those people to get involved with the party like they maybe haven't been able to before. Of course, the one thing that a convention also is, besides a chance to conduct party business, is it serves as, a sort of pep rally to fire up people before the November election. And that is something that will be probably a little harder to create, they acknowledge, in a virtual setting. But they say, look, this is the best that we can do, and we still think that we can provide the energy and get people excited.
It's so interesting that you say it's sort of this pep rally, and many people would say that's the case for the Democratic and Republican conventions. I'm curious, Adam, have you heard anything about how they plan to proceed with those conventions this summer?
Well, right now, the chairs of both parties, the chair of the RNC and the chair of the DNC, are talking about moving forward and hopeful that they can do those conventions, in person, and kind of having to keep an eye on what situations look like on the ground in North Carolina and Wisconsin. RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel said this week they wouldn't look at making changes or scaling down until late June or early July. Their convention isn't until later in August. The DNC, of course, has already made one change to its convention. It was supposed to be in the middle of July. They pushed it back to the middle of August to hold that convention in Milwaukee. DNC Chair Tom Perez said this week, he hopes to be able to do it in person, but it's just going to depend on what the situation looks like in Milwaukee. And the Democrats' presumptive nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden, he has said early in April that this may have to be a virtual convention. But earlier this week, he basically said, look, we don't know if we'll be able to do this in person. It's just going to depend on what the science says. Texas Democrats, for their part, say, we are going to be doing this on a scale bigger than any other state party. We can work with people who have questions about how to pull off some of these virtual events, and we're happy to talk to any of them about how to do this sort of thing and how to recreate that feel and how to execute everything. But they also acknowledge that the scale of a national convention is just much larger, and there are many bigger challenges that come with that, with a national convention, than even a large state convention.
That's very true. Adam, you've reported on the campaign trail for the past several months, past year. How has this coronavirus pandemic, really changed the way campaigning has been conducted?
Well, you touched on it in the introduction, right? The biggest difference is there are no rallies. It's been 6 weeks, more than 6 weeks, since we've seen a presidential campaign rally, and I think that is the most obvious difference that this coronavirus pandemic has caused. On the campaign trail, you have President Trump, still talking to the media on a daily basis as he deals with the coronavirus pandemic. Former Vice President Joe Biden doing campaign events from his home and doing television interviews from his home. But then some of the other things that come with it, fundraising events, have turned into sort of video chat platforms. The Trump campaign has been doing these sort of nightly broadcast of campaign events, trying to get their message out to people in a digital way. And campaigns from presidential levels on down have had to look at ways to do campaign campaigning digitally because they don't know if they'll be able to get back to some of those traditional things, some of those, door-to-door canvassing type events that campaigns rely on. Those organizers who would normally be pounding pavement right now, knocking on doors, are forced to make phone calls and send text messages. And of course, the other big thing that's changed is there has been a lot more voting conducted by mail. States are looking at having to, build out those operations. Many of the Democratic primaries got delayed. Some that weren't delayed were conducted entirely by mail or predominantly by mail, as Wisconsin went forward with in-person voting, but more than 1 million people voted by mail in that election. That is something that we'll have to see what the impact is in November, and it will just kind of depend probably on what the situation looks like then. But the voting aspect and the campaign aspect have certainly been dramatically changed these past few months, and we'll see how those changes will be implemented going forward.
So many unknowns still as we begin the start of the spring. I want to thank you very much, Adam Brewster, for joining us.
Thank you.